right, so we have Chad Kassem here in the Analog Productions Acoustic Sounds QRP video room. Wanted to interview him. He's got a really interesting life story. I've heard some interviews with you before on how, how this all happened. It's a lot of crazy stuff. Coming here, I'm just super impressed by everything that you guys are doing. You got like 20 buildings of it all involves, getting the record from the recording to people's, living rooms or whatever. So, anyways, we've been just digging around, looking at records for the past couple hours, just trying to dig out some cool stuff out of his collection. And me trying to twist his arm to buy me sell me some things. So, anyways, but I thought I'd try to get the story from you about how you just kind of how you got started with records. I mean, starting from day one. When do you remember feeling that draw towards records?
Well, growing up in South Louisiana, there's just music everywhere. I mean, you can't escape it. There's just so many festivals and live music going on. Most of the first part of my life, I was into the sports and statistics, and my father was a football coach. And then like you're a little bit younger, so just to tell you what it was like when growing up, when you're 15 or 16 years old, like the Morants, that you'd buy a receiver, 2270 with turntable, a receiver, and a pair of speakers. And almost every 15-year-old had about this many records and, a Marantz, 2 speakers, and a turntable. And, that's what we did. Like we'd go to concerts or, you might be into sports or all of them, which I kind of was. But we didn't have all the stuff that's going on now. So it's now the people my age, they really remember that, they know that that's what it was, and that's how we grew up. So, I remember, they had a lot of concerts in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. I mean, Zeppelin played in Baton Rouge twice. The Stones played in the Superdome twice. I mean, we got to see pretty much everything. And then I moved to Kansas in 1984. And it's pretty much the year CDs came out. Mm-hmm. So my dad asked me, he said, look, I'm coming up there to visit you. What do you want me to bring? Like, you want me to bring anything? I said, well, you know what? Why don't you bring my stereo and my records? So, I probably had about this many at that time. He brought my stereo and my records. And, they were beat because I'd been partying, party records. And so I just started to replace my favorite records with mint copies. Mm-hmm. Then I went home, and a friend of mine showed me some audiophile records. And I'm like, man, those things, they're way overblown. It's all hype. Those stickers, they exaggerate. It's just a lot of hype. And he's like, well, sit down right here and listen. And, I kept talking. He says, no, you need to listen. Quit talking and listen. And I listened, and, he explained to me, hey, this is subtle. It's small differences, but small differences are big, And I heard what he was talking about, and that's when the light bulb moment happened. And I came back to Salina, Kansas, and the record store, we had a really great record store. I wish we still had it. You'd be impressed. They had about 100 mobile fidelities, all out of print. They had UHQRs, all of them. Wow. And they were already out of print. But it being in Kansas, nobody came cherry-picked it yet. Yeah. So I pretty much started with their stock, and that's how I started, just reselling their stock.
Oh, wow.
And then I was cooking, and then I started working for North American Phillips, and then when I started making 3 times the money selling records and packing records on the weekend than I was at my day job, and then I realized, it's time for me to quit because now my real job is costing me money. So basically, And I didn't know about classical music then. I mean, you don't grow up in the swamps listening to, Dvorak and, Beethoven and all that. You pretty much Cajun, Zydeco, blues, jazz, classic rock.
Mm-hmm.
So just one thing led to another, then got to be part owner of a mastering facility, Acoustic with Don McInnes from RTI. Then, you just keep rolling and getting, now we can do everything from the microphone to the mastering, to the plating, to the pressing, to the graphic design in-house, to the printing of the inserts in-house, to the printing of the label in-house, to distributing it direct to the consumer. The only thing out of that whole process that we can't do is the album jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we do have the printing press to do it. We could do that. But we couldn't do any other jobs, right? Like you tweak your press to run the same thing over and over,
Right.
Like that's all we would do is jackets.
Yeah.
So I could do that, but I like to make it sound funny. I have to go to sleep sometime at night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. So early days, you first started to sell. I mean, there was no eBay, right? There was no internet, none of that stuff. How were you selling in the beginning? Were you doing record shows or anything?
I would go to buy at record shows. Now I'd go to hi-fi shows and sell.
Okay.
Like in 1988, I think was the first hi-fi show I went to in New York, and this is a good story. In fact, Jerry was with me. It was me, Jerry, and my dad. It was a hi-fi show at the Penta, which is I think by Madison Square Gardens, and they give you a booth. We weren't taking credit cards. This is back when it was hard to get accepted to take credit cards, and they were, how I had a bar, at a busy bar, they're like 3, 4, 5 people deep trying to get a drink.
Mm-hmm.
We had them 4 and 5 deep trying to give us money, and like this guy would be, take it here, and this guy would be. We sold so many in the first 2 days that we had a next day air on an airplane for Sunday delivery. This is back before, they had FedEx, but you couldn't get like a Sunday delivery.
Right.
We had to go to JFK or LaGuardia to pick it up because we were out of inventory.
Wow.
We did like 30 grand in 3 days, and in '88, and I had never even made 15,000 in a year.
Yeah.
Before that.
Wow.
And now again, you take your cost out of the product and your hotel rooms in New York and the eating and the flights. I mean, it left a couple of grand, I'm sure, but we would just take the money and almost just throw it on the ground. It was just, and like we had a pile.
Yeah.
The money is just on the ground in our booth. Me and my dad, and my dad, I'll never forget, he'd want to count the money every night. And I'd say, listen, let's go out to eat. Let's just go out to eat. He says, Chad, I can't believe you don't know how much money you made today. You don't really care. I said, Dad, if counting it made it grow, I'd be counting it. But we did what we did, and I'm hungry. Let's go enjoy.
Yeah.
But then he'd count. He goes, okay, you did 10 today. At this pace, if you do 10 each day, you'll do,
Yeah.
Because he's a different kind of businessman than, I'm more of an entrepreneur, and he's more of a percent and
Oh yeah.
yeah, and counting.
Analytical type.
Oh yeah. It was so funny because, and I mean, he could not believe that I didn't want to know to the penny what we made that day.
Well, I think this is kind of the way I am too, is the way you are. Is that it's not that I don't care how much money it is. It's just that I want to do my work, and if I make a whole bunch of money, I don't really see that as my money. It's that goes back in to keep doing what I want to do. So does money motivate me? Not really. What motivates me is the freedom to do more things and to do things better, and all that stuff. It seems like for you, I feel like you're that way, but that you.
It's more of an entrepreneur, because an entrepreneur, what they say is they just want enough money to do their next project.
Yeah.
To buy your next collection.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you made $30,000, people will be like, $30,000, that's great.
Let's
if you
go
had
buy
that
a
amount
car.
of, yeah, but you can't do that because you don't really have $30,000. You have money for the next thing, but that's not really, you know what I mean? You can't call that personal money.
I know. I mean, and that's why the person that thinks the other way, business may not make it.
Well,
you got to reinvest it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I completely agree. That's what I've always done. When we opened our shop, my whole thing was just snowballing it, making it bigger and bigger, and
buy, sell, and trade.
Yeah,
buy, sell, and trade.
Once you started growing and doing the record show thing, or audio show thing, or whatever, you started taking out ads and doing like.
Well, the first thing I did was the classified ads in the back of Audio Magazine, Stereophile, and the Absolute Sound. You'd have just a little classified. If you're interested in audiophile records, call me. Here's the number, here's the address. And, we get letters, postcards, hey, please send me your catalog. Or they'd call, hey, what do you have?
When you were starting off, back in those days, did you do the business, so you could get more records? Or did you think you would ever end up doing any of this?
Okay, so I never thought that you could do what you love for a living. I thought you went to work for 40 hours a week doing something you didn't like doing, so when you were off, you could do something you liked doing. But I never thought, I used to go to the record store every week, and never was I smart enough, or never did I think, wow, I could work behind the counter. Right. I could get a job here. I never thought about it until it just all happened. I don't know the word organically.
Yeah, for me it was that way. I've always kind of had a entrepreneurial spirit. When I was a kid, I started my first business in second grade, selling pencils and stuff.
Oh, really?
And I got suspended because I had outsold the school store and they weren't selling anything because I sold them out of my desk. And then I got suspended. My dad said, hey, let's take this money and start another business. I bought a bunch of chickens and I would sell eggs.
Really?
At church, yeah, to all the church ladies. And then after that, I started getting into guitars. I would buy guitars and fix them and sell them. And then I always sold records too when I was really young to my friends. We would sell and trade with each other. I had a couple friends that were into it. So for me, it's always just been such a part of life. That's kind of who I am. I like wheeling and dealing. I love negotiating. When I was a kid, my dad would have me out at yard sales, and I'd have my money, and I wouldn't have any of his money, and I'd have to negotiate with people as like a 7-year-old or whatever. So I've always kind of enjoyed it, but I was the same. I didn't think I could make that my main job. It just seemed too good to be true.
Yeah. I think that the same thing happened for you as me is, even though we should have realized early that we love music and that we ought to do this for a living, at least for me, for sure, I never recognized that like I would think I should have, but it just happened. And now I can't understand why I didn't think about that earlier.
It's always an imaginary wall, like some way you can't do. I don't know, because for me, I was like, I can't start a record store. What? I was like, well, what would I do about my taxes? You just do it. You hire somebody. You could just do it.
Figure it out as you go.
Figure it out as you go, and that's what I've always done. But it is, for me, it was this imaginary wall that wasn't really there. But I just thought, if I get to that and don't know what to do, but I got to the point where I was like, screw it. Worst case scenario, I fail and then I'm back in the space I'm in now. So whatever, might as well try. What was that like buying your first printing press? And when was that?
Pressing, record press.
Yeah.
Okay, so I used to press our records. The first record I reissued was like in 1989 and then 1991. That was the beginning. Okay, and so I used RTI, which is a great pressing plant. Maybe more, I mean, definitely, probably the best in America, but we're trying to, you know, very good pressing plant. I used them forever until we started Quality Record Pressings. I started Quality Record Pressings in 2010, I think.
Okay.
That's probably when I bought our first presses.
Wow. And was that like I mean, I guess you probably hired somebody to help you figure it out or something, right?
Yes. I hired a person named Gary Sahlstrom that worked at RTI. I'm very good friends with Don McInnes, the owner of RTI, and Rick Hashimoto and all these guys. They had no problem sharing their knowledge with me, and pretty much most of their advice was, don't do it, because the boilers cost a lot of money, the chillers cost a lot of money. It's very, very hard. Now I can see exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
Man, I mean, I can't tell you how mind-blowing it is for me to see it. And, like, it's just so many little tiny steps that you wouldn't even think about. It takes up somebody's day or week or month to get it right, It's pretty incredible. So, among, like, other pressing plants, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of, like, competition going on. Like, you guys, I guess it's the same way, with record stores or anything else. Sometimes they play nice, sometimes it's competitive. Is it competitive at all?
Well, we started in 2010, and there wasn't a whole lot of presses out there, and there wasn't any new presses. Well, then when COVID hit, things got crazy. And it wasn't really competitive then either, because we all were backlogged for like a year. But now that things caught up, and there's so many new presses out there, new pressing plants, it is getting competitive. Although, I haven't run into any cutthroat stuff. I mean, basically, there's RTI and there's QRP and then there's the rest.
Well, I mean, and there's a lot of pressing plants that do different stuff too.
Yeah, color and splatter.
Splatter and specialty stuff, and it just depends on what you want your label to do. And it's nice that there's so many options for stuff like that. But I think anybody that wants to press like audiophile high quality records, they obviously know about you guys. So obviously, one thing that's being kind of talked about a lot on YouTube and everywhere else is how much 2020 affected the vinyl market. And I mean, it just like blew everything out of the water, and then now it's kind of healing a little bit from the hype. But I mean, tell us about like early on when you started realizing like, oh man, this is crazy. And I mean, everybody knows pretty much it blew up, and then the bubble busted, kind of popped, and now everything's kind of evening out. And but explain when it first started blowing up, what that was like.
Everybody was running away from vinyl. I mean, just running away as fast as they could to get into CD. And so, since nobody was doing vinyl, my business doing vinyl always was on the rise. A slight rise, but on the rise. So we've just grown a little bit, and I bought the pressing plant in 2010. I didn't know that there was going to be, this explosion. But we always was growing, just a little bit, growing a little bit. And then whenever COVID happened, it was like throwing gas on a fire. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And it happened kind of overnight. Next thing you know, we're shipping out 1,000 orders a day, and we're having people cancel because it's taken a while to get their orders out,
So, I think that so many people getting into records at the same time, getting into jazz at the same time, as they're growing, they'll realize, I really like, the sound quality really matters. And I mean, I don't want to throw any labels in the dirt, but there's a lot of cheapo labels that are just like taking the CD mix or whatever and throwing it on a piece of plastic and putting it out there for $14 or whatever, and you get what you pay for. And
I call it a 12-inch CD. You know,
that's a good way of putting it. But and so I guess as people grow, I see a lot of the people that buy audiophile stuff are the same people that are trading in those, the junk ones. That they don't cost much to make, and they're not very good. So I get. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is, when the lesser label, how you call it, stuff goes out of print, and the higher quality stuff goes out of print, which one rises?
Right. But people always ask me, like, when they found out I was starting a label, they say, you got to reissue this record. Like, well, dude, that's on an EMI. I can't do that. You come on. Why wouldn't you just do this? Like, you could just say, "Hey, we're gonna reissue the whole Beatles catalog today. Let's do it." You can't just do it.
Oh man, I'm sorry to enjoy that I'm not the only one.
Oh no, I mean, they think it's just as easy as
it's like
you pay them.
I got a good idea. You ought to reissue all the Beatles albums. I'm like, man, I never thought of that.
The Beatles? Do you think people would like that?
You ought to reissue all the Zeppelin albums. They come up to me with these great ideas, and I'm not saying they're bad.
Yeah.
And then they say, Chad, you ought to do this. And I listen to them. I take a deep breath. And I let them tell me the whole thing, and I said, you know what? That's a great idea. That is a great idea. It's such a good idea. Why don't you do it? Yeah. And then they're like, I don't have the time.
Well, I mean, people have to be thinking, he's reissuing all the stuff. Why wouldn't he reissue the Beatles? Duh. And obviously you would if it was as easy as that. But I think we were talking recently on the phone, and I don't want to let any cats out of any bags. But when you tell me, we were talking about the cost of a UHQR and the amount that you pay for licensing, which I knew it was a lot. I knew that it was a lot. But still, I was like, what?
Oh, yeah,
when you told me how much it costs to license, like, the Miles Davis UHQR or whatever, or the Steely Dan, I was like, what? So people are saying that you make this UHQR, and it's this box, and it's this pieces of plastic, and you're probably making them for $5 and selling them for $150, and it's just not that way. It's not as cut and dry as that, because the licensing is a huge piece of the puzzle that is so expensive that you don't even think about, especially with these artists like, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, stuff on major labels is major expensive licensing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just going to call Steely Dan and their manager and Universal and say, I want the rights to this. And they're going to go, oh, okay, yeah. How about give us $1 per record?
That sounds good.
Yeah. Nobody ever got the license. You don't think people were asking for Steely Dan?
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever got it. No matter what you buy, it costs the company, the materials.
But I think what people don't understand, and I did not understand until you told me, was that the licensing cost, it's not like per unit, right? It's a percentage of the wholesale cost as well, right?
Okay, yeah. You got the songwriting.
Yeah.
That's typically about $1 per record, maybe $1.10. You can almost average out just the songwriting's $1. But the royalty that goes to the label, that the label usually pays the artist from, so the label gets some, the artist gets some.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you got songwriting royalty, you got the royalty to the label and the artist, you got the jackets, you got the mastering, you got the pressing, you got the plating, you got the labels, you got the inserts, you got the jackets, you got the boxes.
You got the shrink wrap, you got the
shrink
stickers.
Wrap, the stickers.
Yeah.
Just numbering the records, the serial number and the stickers and the shrink wrap.
Yeah.
if they only knew.
Yeah.
If they only knew, they would be a lot nicer in the comments, and there would be.
Well, I think that people, they get all up in arms about, if it's a double LP, 45 RPM, UHQR, and they say it's $150. How in the world you sleep at night charge $150 for a record? And it's like, it's not just a record. It's the amount of time and money and effort. I mean, we went in Chad's office earlier, and this is just for my record, and we spent an hour A-Bing my album to make sure it sounded better than the original. And a bunch of them I noticed, you'd have test pressings that you did 2, 3, 4, 5 times because you really want it to sound better. So all that effort going into it, and then it's on the super vinyl or clarity vinyl or whatever, and you got the flat edge, all these things that you've tweaked to get it, perfect possible. And that's like saying, I can't believe you'd spend you charge $250,000 for a car. Well, you're thinking of a car being a Toyota Corolla. You're not thinking about the car being a Lamborghini Murcielago or whatever they're called. So it's apples and oranges at that point. But
I mean, listen, we're the Rolex, we're the Rolls Royce. We're not for everybody. I'm not making records for everybody. I'm not making. I'm making records for people that understand, that appreciate the quality difference. They can hear it. They can appreciate it. They understand that making the best costs money. And I have enough customers out there that understand that and appreciate that. So if $150 is too much for a consumer for a record, I understand.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it. I mean, really, please don't buy it, because I don't want you to eat less food,
Right.
I don't want you to not buy your children tennis shoes. Like, these are made for people that can appreciate the difference, that understand the difference, that hear the difference. And typically businessmen understand the cost. Like, a lot of our customers are businessmen. They know that 150, if I get to keep a small percentage out of that, I'm lucky. Plus, I have to, I had to make commitments and guarantees that I might not. It's a risk. I could lose money. In fact, it happens. I'll lose money.
Yeah. But then on the other side of that, you've got a $150 record, but then like your regular standard 33 RPM, prestige jazz stuff is $40 a record, which now the Tone Poets are like, the retail's like $45 or something like that. So, I mean, I know a few years ago, $40 a record, cause I think it used to be like maybe $35, and money's just totally changed in the past 5 years. It's ridiculous. But now, like $40 for a good sounding quality reissue of that caliber, I think is a good deal. I mean, for what it is.
Well, ERC is charging like $575, I think. I'm not sure exactly what they charge.
Yeah.
And the originals are going for thousands. Mm-hmm. And we got a lot of that money invested in the product, and so. It's just the way it is. Now, I'll tell you this. In 1992, I was charging $30 a record in 1992. Mm-hmm. So between 92 and now, it only went to 40.
Yeah.
Now, I bet you if you do the inflation calculator of $30 in 1992.
It'd be $75 now.
Right.
Or whatever,
It would be at least 50 to 75.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we really haven't raised it that much.
Right. I mean, yeah. So it's been fun going around here, and we've made several videos today, so I can't remember what I've said and what I haven't said, but it's overwhelming coming in here. From the second I came in here, just looking around and seeing, like, in every corner there's a $30,000 set of speakers or whatever. I'm like, this is a $125,000 turntable right here. So, like, there's really cool. It's like if you were to give somebody who had this crazy obsession with records tons of money to do whatever they wanted, you know, there's just there's all these experiments, like one room where you got a certain setup, you got a turntable museum in here, you know, your office, the sound system in there is unbelievable. You got a fireproof vault for your records. You got, you know, so I've really enjoyed coming around here, and I know you've, I probably have annoyed the heck out of you trying to get you to sell me things. But that's how it, you
That's
get
all
it.
right.
Because that's that's how record collectors are.
I mean, hey, hey, be ready when I come to North Carolina, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the good thing about your stuff is it's priced and in the bin already.
If you came to my house,
okay, well
that probably would be a rub.
yeah, that's where.
Yeah.
No, I mean, listen, man, this has just been a big hobby. You know, my goal is to hear. I mean, the goal of this business and my hobby is to hear my favorite albums sounding better than they've ever sounded before.
Yeah.
To put on that Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
To crank it up, and remember when I saw him with the Amboy Dukes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Crank it.
Well, I mean, now, like, if I go to a concert, it's almost disappointing because I know how good it sounds at home, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
You got to watch your ears at them concerts, man.
Yeah, no, I get it.
You
but
really got to watch your ears because they're so loud.
Yeah.
And the sound on most concerts is just horrible, you know?
Yeah. But, I mean, you know, people accuse audiophiles of, like, anytime I post a video and it has anything to do with audiophiles, they say audiophiles don't even like the music. They just worship their sound systems and are wanting to get, you know. And, like, for me, admittedly, you're probably going to slap me across the face when I say this, but I'm not a big Steely Dan guy. I'm just not. I've never been. But when I put on, you know, Can't Buy a Thrill or whatever, I mean, and that's a UHQR, man, it's unbelievable. But I'm hearing it more clearly and all the intricacies in a different way. It's like when I put on Bob Marley, Rasta and Vibration. I love Bob Marley. That record's not necessarily my favorite of his, but when I hear it, it's just like it brings it to life in a whole new way. So it's not for me, and I'm not an audiophile. I've said that. But for me, it's not even really that I'm worshiping my gear or whatever. It's just that when you're hearing that sound, you can't unhear it. It's just like...
I mean, when I read those comments, when they say the audiophiles are not in it for the music, or it's the music stupid and all that, it's like, boy, you're really judgmental that... I mean, I go home and listen to records.
Yeah.
And I enjoy them. What's wrong that I like them to sound as good as they can?
Yeah.
And it even makes me enjoy them that much more. You know?
You know, I think a lot of people, most people, the ones that don't comment or whatever, they understand different strokes for different folks. They say, you know, I might be fine pulling things out of the dollar bin. They might spend $150 on a UHQR, but whatever, you know. Well, I appreciate your time. I think this is, you know, we could sit and talk about this stuff all
dude,
day. And we've been talking about it for 2 days straight. So.
Yeah, I love you. I love your channel.
Yeah.
I wish your store was in my town. I'd be your best customer. I mean, and
maybe I'll open one here.
Yeah.
Get Jonathan to run it for me.
Well, you know, we had a great store. We had a great store in this town. But, I mean, I love your channel. And I like talking records. And, you know, and everybody collects different things. And thank God, because we got a lot of different records.
Yeah.
If they only bought what I liked, that'd be
right.
about 80% of stuff I couldn't sell.
Right. Right. Well, cool, man. Well,
all right, dude.
We'll get on it. We got a bunch of videos. I mean, we got 3 or 4 going on his channel, on my channel. Make sure you subscribe to Acoustic Sounds KS on YouTube. His channel's great. He's got a lot of great videos on there. If you want to see more about like the process and how everything is laid out, they have a great video that they paid a lot of money to get right. What is it called?
Behind the scenes.
It's behind the scenes, and it has all, like, every step of the process, all the buildings, all the
shows you from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, so check all that stuff out. But thanks for watching, Chad. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks for coming to Kansas, man.
Yes, sir.